Hello, everybody. My name is Dylan Volman, and I would like to welcome you to this special edition of Back Talk Sports. I'm joined by my co-host, Brianna. How are you doing, Brianna?
I am great. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to have Mr. Rob Smith with us tonight.
How are you doing, Mr. Smith?
Excellent. Thanks very much for having me.
All right, so let's get right into our topic here. Kevin Ware's big injury. A horrific injury in the Louisville game. Louisville versus Duke in the Elite Eight. Kevin Ware went up to block a three, and he fell and severely hurt his leg. That injury left his team and his coaches rearing in pain and just sobbing. Now, Mr. Smith, how would a psychologist help a player with a huge injury?
Well, what you're talking about in a case like that, the word trauma comes to mind, and obviously we talk about physical trauma in the sense that the leg, the femur, the tibia shatters, but also there's an emotional trauma. You saw him; he was kind of freaking out when he was lying there. Everybody, you could see the whole bench, kind of like, oh.
Right.
And because they're just not used to seeing something like that, very much like a soldier when they're in battle, when they see somebody who lost a body part. You know, they're traumatized by it. So it's a shared trauma. Everybody was freaked out by it, including the opponent, who was right there, shot the three, looked back to the guy and goes, "What was that?" And he walked away. He had to cover his face. So we're talking about a trauma. And a player like Kevin will have to undergo not only the physical rehabilitation part, which they say is probably 6 months that he'll be back and playing, which is hard to imagine when you see something like that. You think if this guy was a horse, they'd have shot him, right? But he is going to recover fully. That's what the doctors are predicting. And the big challenge, I think, will be not only the rehab and trying to get that leg back into shape and for him to get his coordination back, but also his emotional vulnerability, the feeling of your body just betrayed you. It did something it wasn't supposed to do, and you have to trust your body as an athlete. And if you don't trust it, then what's going to happen is you're going to be always questioning whether, hey, is this going to be the time that it happens again? Right. Or what about the other leg this time? So I think that's part of the challenge, is to help him kind of regain trust in his own body. And that happens through the rehabilitation process. And I'm hoping Louisville has a sports psychologist that can work with him on that part.
Now, I know that Kevin had said that he never wants to see the footage played back again. He never wants to have to relive that moment. So where this is being, broadcasted all over the media, and it is, as easy as clicking a button to watch it again, what do you think is going to be the hardest thing for him to do to deal with the fact that it's out there and that he still has to live with it even though he doesn't want to see it anymore?
Well, he's gotten a strange sort of celebrity because of this injury, and it's an odd way to be famous. I don't think many people even knew who he was who didn't follow Louisville basketball until this moment. Now anybody that you talk to said, "Oh yeah, that kid, what was his name, Ware?" So this guy's become famous for this injury, and I think he's going to have a much harder time shutting off the movies in his head than the video that people are showing on TV and on the internet. Yeah, I think it'll be easy enough for him to not do that. But, people around have shown a great deal of concern about his well-being. They all empathized. They saw the level of love and the caring that his own teammates had, his coach. And at a time in which most of us think of even college basketball as business, this was a very human moment that everybody in the audience and on the benches on both sides really felt the connection with this man's pain.
Speaking of social media, legendary Washington Redskins quarterback Joe Theismann tweeted his condolences to Kevin Ware. How would a player with a past injury help another player going through recovering from a serious injury?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because my mind went right to that, and I was watching the game where that occurred and Lawrence Taylor ran into his leg. And so that's probably one of the first times that I'd ever heard of a leg breaking in that fashion.
Right.
And his tweet came almost instantaneously, so because I was watching the game last Sunday when it happened. And I think what a player who's been through it can do is that they can kind of help outline the map for how, what can he expect. And most of the experience you have when you get injured is that you don't know what to expect. How's this going to feel? What's the surgery going to be like? Well, now that he's already had the surgery, what's the rehabilitation process? How are people going to treat you? And so on. And so the athlete who's been through it can actually share with them sort of their experience and hopefully lower some of the uncertainty and therefore boost some of the trust that it's going to be okay in the long run. He needs to keep telling himself It's going to be okay.
And you know, you're really right. Joe Theismann's leg injury was one of the first ever serious injuries to ever really take a player out like that. I mean, that ended his career. No one had ever seen really a huge career-ending injury like that before, and especially one to a player that great on a stage that big on Monday Night Football.
And now also with the fact that there were so many tweets on Twitter going out about this, there was also the factor with Facebook. I know I had no intention of seeing the actual graphic image of his injury right in front of my face on my computer screen, except because I was scrolling through my news feed, I was subjected to the pictures that people had shared and posted about this, and that was something that I wasn't expecting. So now, when we can't control what we see on our social media sources, how do you think parents should go about protecting their kids, or prefacing them with what they could see on their social media sites?
Well, you're probably making a good plug for the kind of programming that actually filters that stuff out. And I think they call the term curating, the program. So it's really, guiding your kids and maybe creating filters for your kids who are on their computers so that they don't have access and they don't accidentally stumble across that.
Right.
And the media is, and the technology is changing so rapidly. I remember when email first came out, it was amazing the stuff you would get in an email and be like, whoa, holy cow, you don't open that at work, whatever you do.
Right.
So the stuff that was popping up, and now you don't see it because we've developed the filters and the blocks and things like that. So I think we just have to get more sophisticated with our filters, and our parents have to be able to learn how to protect their kids from that kind of exposure. But also, I think you can't spare them every possible image that they're going to run across. So I think you have to have that conversation with them and let them know that this is a very serious injury, but one that this player himself will recover fully from, and that he's going to be okay. And I think that you have to kind of remind the children who are watching and they see that kind of image and they think, oh my God, this guy's going to die.
Right.
Or something, they really don't know. And even I think Matt Lauer, the talk show host in the morning, said that his 11-year-old son came up to him and said, my God, Dad, I saw this image and it was horrible. And so, it affects people, especially when they don't know more about it. So they have to, the parents have to educate the children as to what they're seeing. And that goes for any kind of content, but particularly when it comes to this injury, which is what you're asking. And so that they'll begin to feel like they're safe in this world. I think that when you see something like that, you just don't feel
I know
safe.
when I saw it, my first thought was, wow, that is just horrific. I cannot believe that this is actually real. It looked like it was some photoshopped image is how
you could see
gross
the bone.
it was. It really, really was horrific. So I know I wasn't prepared to see it, and when I did, it really shocked me.
And I've had dozens of ankle sprains in my basketball career, so when I saw him go down initially, because it was from a distance, I saw him go, I saw this kind of leg kind of turn like this.
I think that's what you were saying.
I thought
right?
he blew out an ankle, and I'm thinking, oh, wow.
It's just a turn.
It came a lot worse than that, so obviously.
Now, when a player goes down with a serious injury, the team that this player's on tends to rally behind this player's injury. For recent examples, the Chicago Bulls without Derrick Rose and the Boston Celtics without Rajon Rondo. How does a team get this motivation from that injury?
Well, not every, I'm going to say that not every team does rally so well, and I think that Louisville really deserves an awful lot of credit as a group. When I think it was very helpful that Coach Pitino was there to kind of help them feel rallied around this one cause. But Kevin Ware himself apparently was quoted as having told the kids, hey, forget about me, just go out there and win that game. And I think when you're trying to regroup, and even I think one of the guards for Louisville said, I never thought I was ever going to see something like that. That was, it just really shook everybody to the core. But when the guy who went through it seems okay enough to say, guys, pull it together, it really became a kind of an on-the-field leader who was able to help rally them around a cause. And they certainly, at first you could tell they were kind of shaky when they came out. They started missing some shots, and Duke started to pull ahead a little bit. But then they kind of found their rhythm, and all of a sudden they started to feel the inspiration of, let's go out. There's absolutely no way we're going to let this team beat us tonight.
Now, you mentioned before that you didn't just do sports players' psychology. You did musicians, troubled kids. What drew you into the psychology business?
Well, it's funny, we're talking an awful lot about injury. I was involved in sports much of my life, and particularly the end of my high school career in basketball and into college. I played basketball at a Div 3 school. And what I think was one of the single strongest causes for me to go into sports psychology in particular was an injury that I sustained on my right ankle coming down after a simple play like trying to block a shot. I was coming in off a layup, a guy bumped me in the middle of the air, and I came down on my foot in a weird way, and it turned over, and I heard it pop, and the guy at half court said he heard it pop, and it was just really kind of one of those gross feelings.
Right.
And the injury really caused me to kind of rethink what I was doing with my my academics. You know, at the time, I thought it was the worst thing in the world that could have happened to me. Even as a Division III athlete, my identity was so tightly wrapped around being an athlete. But I had to really take a step back and take a look at my own path and where was I going to go after basketball, and that was clearly going to end by my senior year in college. So I had to look at where was I going in the long run, and so I ended up transferring after my sophomore year to a school that was much stronger in psychology. And lo and behold, the first week I was there, I ran into a professor who taught psychology, and he had a lot of interests that I had. And he told me about this thing called sports psychology, and I'd never heard of it before.
So then you could morph the two
together. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. So I walked out pumped, and I did research as an undergrad, and went on to graduate school and pursued the career that I'm in right now. So that's how it all got.
So that's how an injury like that can really turn things around for you and send you into a path that you had never really thought of before, but that ends up being something that you really enjoy, which is awesome.
Right. And I never would have said it at the time, but I'm glad it happened.
Now, with something like or really any injury, when you can play it over and over and over again on your computer, do you think it desensitizes the severity of the injury when you can take it out of context, like Kevin Ware's injury, for instance, and just keep playing it over and over again? Do you think that makes it seem less severe in any way?
You raise an excellent point. Actually, there are a couple different types of therapies to help people work through trauma that involve replays. But most of the time, what they try to do is they try to get them to replay it, yes, to desensitize, but also to kind of maybe alter it in some ways. So it's really, it is true that anxiety, which is, traumatic injury, falls under the general umbrella of anxiety disorders, is diminished by repeated exposure to the event. So while the first inclination is to say, oh no, I don't ever want to see that again, actually what decreases the potency and the power of what makes you anxious is to actually go through it repeatedly, but under a more controlled and safe condition.
Right.
Now, besides having a serious injury, why else would an athlete come to a sports psychologist?
Many people come to see a sports psychologist because they feel as though their performance is less than what their potential is. Maybe they had performed at a higher level before, and that could have been because they were injured and then they're on the comeback trail. Or they were just starting to notice that things that they ordinarily could do before, many figure skaters and gymnasts, for example, I've worked with that have said, well, I used to be able to do this and now I can't. I'm balking, I'm pulling up. A catcher who's played baseball their whole life suddenly can't throw the ball back to the pitcher. And they literally can throw it back, but there's something in their mind that second guesses what they're doing, and what should be automatic suddenly becomes something that they start to intervene and try to guess, oh, am I doing it just the right way? So they come to see a sports psychologist in order to kind of help clear their mind of that noise that interferes with what their body knows how to do.